All right, so after months of delving into Warhammer 40k and kind of going down that rabbit hole that everybody was telling me about, finally get to know more in depth about the Emperor of Mankind, right? By Luton09. The links to the original video and channel are going to be down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. Now, I know this is a 4-part series. This video, more likely than not, is going to be split into 2 parts since it is about an hour and a half. But I want to know way more about his background. There's always seems to be a lot of mysteriousness to him, which I guess is kind of good because writing-wise, it gives you a lot of avenues to really explore later on down the future. I want to know just kind of what his thought process is on certain decisions. I want to know what actions he took that obviously are not necessarily so kind, and then some instances where he was. Because, I get a lot of mixed feelings about this dude. I finally can kind of at least pinpoint maybe at certain phases in his life, maybe he changes to a certain way depending on certain situations, circumstances. So I don't know what to expect. Many hours later on for the other parts. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that notification button so you get notified every time I do upload. And without wasting too much more time, let's go ahead and get right into the video.
There once was a man born in a forgotten time, created by a force of unknown origin. He would cross the ages knowing his one purpose: to lead humanity as the greatest empire in the galaxy.
Wait, created by... He said created in a way that no one knows, or a mystery? I believe that's what he said. I don't know if this is meaning him to like his actual abilities or if him actually being born. But,
The Imperium of Man. In this time, he would be known by only one name: the Emperor of Mankind.
I also can't remember if someone said he actually does have a real name or like a natural name, or maybe he just discarded his name at some point. And I think somebody mentioned it before. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but just a little more curiosity. And he always looks to have, every time I see this picture of him, he always looks like a souped up version of Jesus, kind of, right?
This is Luton. I must first apologise for the length of time since the last project. The simplest explanation is it took me a long time to compile amid many other things going on for me. So we now move on from the Eldar history and wade into one of the most important and complicated narratives in the universe of the 41st millennium. It is, of course, the rise of humanity and the Imperium. In the dark, never-ceasing war that is the future, humans have risen to control and maintain a galaxy-spanning empire whose official title is the Imperium of Mankind. The Imperium is the largest and most powerful political entity in the galaxy. It has been established for a period of some 10,000 years up to its present date in the age of Warhammer 40k. The lore and scripture around this period is massive. Despite this daunting task though, I've decided to interpret it in one piece chronologically, splitting it into chapters so as to best enable you guys to get an understanding and a grasp of what it is all about. This is the third video in my Warhammer 40,000 lore series, and it seeks to create a foundation for all of the further videos which talk about the Imperium of Man.
I almost did forget that he does actually have a playlist which kind of lists everything in chronological order, like he said. So like for like new people coming into Warhammer can get it in a way that everything will make sense. Like they don't have to like consistently look around and try to piece everything themselves. He's kind of already done it. And the fact that another thing that really made me want to watch the video is that there was a part 4 that I believe just came out, and it's like there has to at some point in this be so much information on him that most people, at least that are barely coming in, are curious about. So I mean, I don't know because I haven't seen these videos yet, but that's kind of what I'm hoping.
The Imperium of Man consists of the planets, systems and forces throughout the galaxy which contain Imperial citizens and their derivatives. Not all humans are universally members of the Imperium though, and as you would expect there are rogue traders and those who choose to live on the legal fringes of the society. The single most important figure within the Imperium is the aforementioned founder, saviour and ruler of this empire, known as the Emperor of Mankind. He formed the Imperium some 10,000 years previous to the current established date in the universe of Warhammer 40,000 at the end of the 30th millennium. This occurred following an especially brutal period of societal disintegration during the last days of the Age of Strife. In this video, I'll outline the political state that is the Imperium, as well as the history behind how humanity reached this point in the far future. As with anything though, the complexity and depth of the lore means I can't cover it in its fleshed entirety, so some tangents are going to have to remain for future videos, but I do my best to cover as much as possible which is relevant. The Emperor of Man sits as an extremely powerful figure within the Imperium. Make no mistake, he is the centre of humanity in the 41st millennium. So powerful a humanoid, he was arguably barely human to begin with, and he continues to protect mankind after his mortal wounding during the final battles of a period known as the Horus Heresy. Were it not for his ever-present psychic voice reaching out, searching, protecting and planning, then the Imperium of Man would undoubtedly fall back into dark oblivion, and perhaps the light would be extinguished permanently. The Emperor was injured so badly after the heresy that he now exists only as a husk of a man within a stasis chamber called the Golden Throne. This allows him to live on eternally as he has done for some past 10,000 years, whilst continually guiding mankind through psychic whispers. The only catch with this is thousands of psykers are sacrificed every day using their essence and psychic power to keep him alive, as he is heavily protected and attended to back on the ancient homeworld of legend, Terra, or Old Earth. The Imperium of Man in the wider galaxy now consists of many systems, planets and trillions of citizens. All the while the Imperial military and the many administrators of mankind, all of whom swear allegiance to the Emperor, all stand together against the nightmares of the galaxy to form...
Can I just say, that is not a bayonet, that is a damn sword. You see this? Holy shit.
what is humanity in the darkest of futures.
All right, so I just want to say also real quick, as far as the Emperor helping humanity, right? Like, I know he does all these things to help them kind of regain their position in the universe. But now he's doing this out of kind of the goodness of his heart. I mean, maybe he is like he genuinely cares about his race, and he's having to make a lot of decisions which seem could be ethical or unethical, depending on how you see it, right? Making hard choices. Or is he doing this because I know he knows of the existence of chaos gods, right? And he's trying to actively, I don't know how actively, but he's trying to like get rid of them, right? And he probably realizes he can't do this on his own. So he has to, in a way, hold everybody together because, what was it, emotions and all that get transferred to the war, helps the chaos gods become more immortal or stronger. Kind of like, to sum it up very basically. But is he in and of himself using humanity as a weapon? And that is the only reason why he's trying to help humanity, because he realizes he needs a lot of people and a lot of those emotions to like help manifest. And he realizes he needs that to defeat the chaos gods. So is he really helping humanity out of the goodness of his heart, or is he doing it because he sees them as a threat to him, right? And I think at some point someone said that he had made some kind of deal with the chaos gods and then turned his back on them. I don't know how true that is. I think it was a theory, although I'm not 100% sure. But is it one or the other? Is it for a selfish reason he's helping humanity, or is it a good reason that he genuinely does care, right? And just has to make hard decisions at certain points.
We know that in this future we have access to highly advanced technology and face many voracious enemies wielding our own forces to then counter them. The important question in understanding the Imperium is, how did we get to this time? And to understand this, we need to look back at the extensive and dark history of humanity. There is a small clue as to the way in which the people that constitute humanity in the 41st millennium view their past. That is, the imperial two-headed eagle, the crest of the Imperium. It stands with its two heads, but with one eye closed. Blind, or perhaps refusing to see the past. The other eye is open, looking to the future. The logic being that the past of humanity is too painful or dangerous to look back on, so we look forward, striving to be stronger and more powerful, as we have done for thousands of years.
I will say I never saw that. I didn't even know it was open. I thought it was just all black on each side. Interesting, though. An interesting way of also to depicting the whole thing about the, the dark times, dark age of technology, the men of iron. I was about to say the Iron Warriors for some reason, but the men of iron, all that AI stuff. Or was it the Age of Strife as well? I don't know. I'm getting my timelines mixed up again.
There are distinct ages of humanity's history, and these tell the story of how we reached the time of the Imperium. 1 millennium equals 1,000 years. The Imperium has now been established for 10 millennia or 10,000 years. Humanity has existed for roughly 41,000 years. This timeline demonstrates the ages of man through this period, from our ancient history through to the age.
Wait, you said it was mankind has only been alive for 41,000 years? Well, I guess AD and BC. I always got confused with BC and AD. Okay, so ancient history. I'm assuming this is where we're at, right? We're considered ancient by this point. Obviously, it's been like 40,000 years. Age of Terra. I'm assuming that's when stuff started to get good. Like people were advancing, and the golden age of technology part was where everything was fine. We were like out in the universe, things going on. And then the dark age of technology, obviously, when things kind of went crazy, AI coming in. Oh, look at that. It was, the Age of Strife was before. Okay. So Age of Strife, Unification Wars. Unification Wars, when the Emperor came in, I think, right? That's when he launches the Great Crusade, starts to get everyone back together, starts finding the Primarchs, and the Horus Heresy, obviously Horus, doing Horusy things, and then the Great Scar Raiding, where, if I remember right, he was, I think Sigismund was a part of it too, where they started like sending people out to go get the traitors, right? And then Imperium of Man, or 40K.
Of the Imperium. We have the ancient history, the Age of Terror, the Golden Age of Technology or the Dark Age of Technology, the Age of Strife, the Unification Wars, the Great Crusade and the Fall of the Eldar, the Horus Heresy and the Great Scouring, followed by the final Age of Imperium of Man. The ancient history tells of the dawn of mankind, but this period is largely one of animalistic evolution. The most significant event occurs around 7000 BC. This event marks the birth of the humanoid, who would become the Emperor of Mankind. His origins are something of a heated debate among the 40k community. There are several theories around this, and it's important to note that something I rarely see stated on forums or discussions around the origins of the Emperor is that quite simply no one knows the origins of the Emperor. It's all just speculation. Simply because one theory has had a vague reference at one time or another does not make it gospel. In fact, as I've repeated before, the crux of the matter with imperial history and lore in general is that very little should ever be considered official or canon. Such is...
Alright, so there's no definitive answer. But, did the Emperor... well, no, the Emperor probably didn't tell anybody then, because then we would have an answer. Okay.
The state of the loss of history, misinformation, and suppression of facts within the 40k universe. So essentially, the correct version is the version you want to believe. In a universe where history is stored over thousands of years, and in times of unimaginable devastation and strife, it's unlikely something could be considered a cold, hard fact, especially when you're talking about events that happened in ancient history in an age where accurate recording of information seems unlikely or even impossible to have survived. The first version of these events is the often widely accepted background which states that in the ancient times, some humans carried a natural affinity or awareness of the warp. These were the earliest psychers. They would be village shamans or witch doctors in ancient communities. Their premonitions led them to understand that in the future, mankind would face the darkest of times. Their decided course of action would be to commit ritual suicide en masse, returning their souls en essence to the warp to then coalesce and be reborn as one supremely powerful psychic being. This being would then spend the future millennia living a Highlander-like existence, transitioning from identity to identity, sometimes taking on famous leaders in history to steer humanity in the right direction. And then upon reaching the Age of Strife, he would step into the Four to become the supreme leader of all humanity and unite us again throughout the galaxy.
So kind of like a Link type thing, where it's like it's one thing that's kind of moving from like person to person. Say like when someone dies, right? I'm assuming getting stronger each time, if I'm hearing that correctly.
Now, some people take this as the most canon version of the Emperor's origin, but there are various others, including the one that I actually personally subscribe to. The shaman story is all very well and good, but it leaves me with some questions. For example, if these shaman were some of the earliest humans with only a vague awareness of the warp, how could they have such powerful precognition to foresee the need to create such a super being? In addition to that, if they were truly the earliest stowings of psychers for humanity, then surely they would not have been especially powerful, and even with their powers combined, how could they summon humanity's greatest champion? No, not Captain Planet. So, those two things stand out for me. Also, their plan to commit mass suicide and then hope that they would all be reborn together seems pretty spurious. It seems to tick the boxes from an okay, I guess that's possible point of view, but it just doesn't make sense beyond that. Another theory is that the Emperor was in fact one of the Old Ones, who you will remember.
What if the Emperor was a psyker, right? What if he was one of the shamans that was a psyker, and the fact that people just barely kind of knew about it? What if a demon came through, possessed him, but this demon wanted to rebel against one of the Chaos Gods, and thus maybe showed him how to use the powers of psychers from the warp? Right? No, because then that would make the Emperor part of Chaos. You know what? It's a dumb theory. Don't listen to me on that.
Were one of the most ancient super beings who created the Eldar, the Orcs, and even humanity. Yes, really. Go and look it up for those naysayers who think that they did not. This theory, again, at first is captivating, until you start to think about it more. And then you realise it doesn't really make any sense. The Old Ones were, as far as we are informed, not shapeshifters, but creatures of light and dark. There was a statement to the fact that just a single Old One escaped the brutal genocide of their race, but then was eventually killed at the birth of Slanesh when the Eldar fell. If the Emperor was some other escaped Old One, it doesn't make logical sense that they would choose one race and then ultimately lead it. Although I suppose, devil's advocate, who's to say what will be going in the mind of this Old One after his entire race was extinguished? Maybe it had a crisis of conscience. Anything, I guess, is possible. And then not to mention also the fact that the Emperor would lead humanity to wage war on pretty much every other alien race, which wouldn't really serve any purpose within the context of an Old One's mission statement. They were originally life givers. They seeded planets with life to, create new races in the universe. And again, unless it had simply lost the plot and was operating on his own sort of mission plan. There are some things that do fit this theory though, such as Old Ones being very powerful psychic creatures. They had extended precognition, they had very extensive, almost immortal long life, and they would have the ability to genetically manipulate humans. But all of this seems very soft and is only plausible at best. For me, this theory just doesn't really fit. So the last theory, and the one that I personally believe, is that the Emperor was neither the creation of some bizarre suicide pact or an Old One, rather something in between. It's fair to say that in any ancient history nothing is quite as it's written, and that some reading between the lines is necessary. The most ancient of history available hints that the last remaining Old One floated around the galaxy, meddling and dabbling and trying to have some last impact on the worlds which they felt they had failed and left their race completely annihilated. We know that the Old Ones were capable of creating beings of immense psychic power. This is how the ancient Eldar defeated the Necrons and Satan, who were, let's not forget, gods capable of devouring stars. So the theory I stand by is that a fragmented remaining Old One drifted around the galaxy until he was struck by a precondition so terrible that he had no choice but to resolve becoming involved. It could be that he saw the vision of the Eldar fall or the rise of chaos. Either way, he knew that the Eldar were by now far too arrogant to accept any help and would be of no use, remembering that the Eldar had turned their backs on the Old Ones long ago. The Orcs, who were also an Old One's creation, they were too crass and mindless for such preparation. Instead, he would turn to the weak humans. Weak, but with great potential.
So kind of just hitting the reset button and then starting again from the bottom, as far as like creating life, altering it, and maybe also they saw or knew or felt that the Emperor, future Emperor man, was there and thought, like, hey, this would be a great person, right?
And so he would decide on forming a divine creature, a humanoid of the most immense power, but birthed in such a way that he would not allow those humans would not immediately view him as a god, but as a man, to be not worshipped, but instill a sense of power, of awe, of destiny. There are other clues as well. Apparently, further along in Earth's ancient history, a creature crashed to Earth who had an appearance we would describe as a dragon. It would seem, though, that this dragon was in fact a small fragment of the star gods, the Satan, who had been destroyed thousands of light years away by the Necrons. Even a tiny fragment of these most powerful beings would be beyond the means of even the most powerful humans to contain. The future Emperor in this time wounded this creature and then apparently took it to Mars. I'm not sure how, but there it lay imprisoned within the planet. The final chapter of that story, that's one for another day. Still though, this helps to secure the idea that no mere reincarnation of a few shaman could produce such or perform such a task. Could an old one? Perhaps. But given the other...
Could it also be... Now, it does make a lot of sense, at least the way he described it right now, how the shaman thing would have worked. I think a way it could have worked, and this is kind of me just freeballing here, what if a lot of them were naturals? Right? I mean, obviously, we don't know how many there were. I mean, obviously, it would probably just be a handful considering the time and how many people like were in like tribes and all that. And usually, from what I understood, shamans, there would only be like one or two in a tribe or something like that. But what if maybe they were naturals, or maybe because they didn't really understand the powers of the warp and all that, that they had literally no restriction, right, as far as using their power. And then maybe after time, people were starting to develop like natural, call it a limiter or something, so that maybe you wouldn't like screw yourself over essentially, right, with as far as using those powers. But if the shamans didn't have that restriction and they were able to do this, although that does seem kind of a far-fetched, kind of. No, you know what? Kind of bit, quite a bit actually.
Other evidence, I would still discount it. But a perfectly designed humanoid of godlike form created by an old one who would know a most powerful psychic being was needed to counter not just the future darkness of man, but to face again the Satan and the day of reckoning when the Necrons would rise again. This seems for me the most logical and plausible of origins. The truth, though, is that we cannot know the origin of the Emperor unless some definitive tome is discovered which provides secure evidence as to such, so we are left to speculate until then. One thing that is certain, though, is that the Emperor was a human and holds godlike psychic power. He was within humanity throughout all of history, learning, sometimes guiding, mostly sitting in the shadows, until he was needed to take a course of action that would lead us into the Age of the Imperium. The last point worthy of mention is that the Emperor of Man would enforce a strictly secular society. In the early days of the Imperium, this would then enable humanity would identify with him as a man and not as a god. They wouldn't project any religious connotations onto him. Also, because throughout the thousands of years he spent on Earth, he would see the terrible devastation and fragmentation organized religion could cause. He believed that humanity could only achieve its full potential in a strictly secular state. However, even in the crusading period,
Wait, so as far as that part about, I mean, because I understand that I guess the only religion right now that I can think of in there, probably from the Adeptus Mechanicus, their machine god, and then obviously the people who worship the emperor. But as far as like when people still believe like in other religions, like being a Christian, what's it called? Being a Muslim or studying Islam, right? Or a Buddhist. God, I'm really forgetting all the religions right now. But essentially, how did he get rid of them? Obviously, I have an idea of how he did it, But did he try to dissuade them? Try to show them, like, hey, I mean, he can't just say, hey, you're helping chaos gods by doing this, right? And that, a whole bunch of other reasons, or did he just, seems like the route he would have taken, but I don't know for sure. Because at some point, you've got so many people who are religious, and how do you transition that, right?
where the emperor would reunite the lost colonies of man, some people began to spread rumours that he was more than just a powerful man. These beliefs would run so strong it would even question some Astartes to the faith, such as Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow, one of my favourite characters in the 40k and one of the few Space Marines from the Death Guard chapter
The first Grey Knight.
Not to be corrupted by chaos. Some citizens of the Imperium consider the Emperor's stance on faith even a test, so as to distinguish those who can see the whole of the truth, that he is in fact the one true God of mankind. We would now reach the time known as the Age of Terror. This was the period on Earth from the 1st to the 15th millennia, that is the first 15,000 years on Old Earth. A period of extreme technological expansion, from a pre-industrial era to that of fusion power and travel beyond our planet and even solar system.
Wait, so what's that, like around a little under 13,000 years from us? Wait, 15,000? 2,000. Yes. Marine doing math.
Humanity would first colonize new worlds within our system, first on Mars and then the moons of Jupiter, before mankind would start to look at how we could travel beyond. To achieve this next goal, colossal starships were created for humanity to cross the voids between solar systems, and powerful engines at this time. These advanced fusion drives enabled very, very fast but still sublight travel. This meant in order to reach their destination, it could take anything as long as 10 generations of human lifespan to reach their destinations. Subsequently, trade and aid between human colonies was then extremely difficult and would lead to them being established almost as independent states. Very little is known of this period, as imperial records are fragmented and limited. The Emperor during this time had no reason to interfere, and so would continue his own work and research back on Earth.
Now, I know that the population is insane damn near on every planet from what I understand. The hell was that? Except for maybe the Catachan jungle, because I heard that there's only a certain amount of million, which considering for Warhammer is actually considered really low. But if they are this far, I mean, what would you say, like 13,000 years? Is there a way to really, if you had a whole bunch of people go to another planet, how to make that planet sustainable? Now, difficult if it's like a death world, obviously, but could they not make like would there be some kind of way to force the soil, I guess, to be like rich soil, good soil to grow stuff? I forgot what that word was. Fertile. Okay, so as far as being able to do that, and then being able to, I guess, like transfer animals, all that protein, and then eventually, essentially starting another Earth, but obviously it's going to be different, right, from Terra. Was there, I'm assuming it does happen, but then with the Dark Age technology, and then, when everything does go horrible, I don't know if they were really reliant on the trade between planets, which is to the point that why a lot of planets just kind of died out from what I remember. Or did some of them actually, I do know there were some that managed, some is a small word, but they managed to be able to sustain themselves because they did have, I guess, like fertile soil. I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to explain what I'm trying to think and put it into words. But could a planet have been sustainable, or were some of them just screwed from the beginning, essentially?
Study and the improvement of man, all the while remaining in the shadows. During the period between the 1st and 15th millennium, various events of discovery and importance took place that would finally propel us to create our first interstellar confederation in the 15th millennium. One of the most important events of note would be during M4. Humanity would discover the warp and begin to research it. This is specifically relevant as it would have been one of the discoveries that would lead the Emperor to understanding the necessity of him coming into the fore. As we reach the 15th millennium, humanity would enter a golden age of technology. This would be the highest point in mankind's technological achievements. It would last for some 10,000 years, and humanity continued its rise in technology, science and power, spreading and colonizing mankind all across the Milky Way galaxy. We could create our first galactic empire, ruled from Earth, the homeworld, and establish massive trade networks that further powered expansion and advancement. This earlier period in the Age of Technology has a subtitle known as the Stellar Exodus. This marks the time when humanity made its first colonies on other worlds, and also beyond the solar system. These initial colonies were reached using the ships that were still only capable of sublight speeds and were restricted by this, as well as our developing but limited knowledge of building these vast scale ships. When these ships reached their destination though, they would be then slowly deconstructed and the materials used to build the colonies. Some would become manufactorums capable of producing massive war machines, or then back then defensive machines, things such as Imperial Knights and even Titans, which the colonies would use to defend themselves against the dangers of the galaxy.
I'm curious to know about what was the first moment they saw an alien? And was it a friendly, peaceful meeting, or did they just kind of attack it?
In a comparable way to early colonies on Earth, this meant they had to be self-sufficient, and due to the large timescales involved before anyone would likely reach out to them again, they would develop their own cultures and languages largely influenced by the noble families established on these interstellar voyages, as well as physical elements on the new homeworld. The planet's characteristics would also shape the way in which their societies would evolve. Now, some 6,000 years later, around the period of Millennium 21, mankind now began a process of militarization. It is not known who or for what reason created this process or started it off, but along with our expansion and colonization of planets, we also began to expand and develop our weapons and forces. Fragments of what was developed during this age of technology, such as
obviously for the probably alien races they were coming up against, or maybe the Emperor was the one that was maybe behind the scenes at this point, because I don't believe he's taken the reins, so to speak, but working behind the scenes, started pushing people towards that, because he's like, hey, we're going to need a whole lot of firepower.
As Imperial Knights, Titans, Land Raider designs and so on would later be recovered by the Imperium far into the future. The largest proportion, however, would be lost to the tides of time, and we can only imagine or hope to continue recovering these lost and most powerful of technologies in the 41st millennium. Humanity had risen to a period of immense power through our technology, and whilst the Emperor of Man existed, he had not made himself known to mankind. He continued to bide his time, lying in the shadows, studying, planning, observing. The very fact that the Emperor is one of the few who would live through this time and on into the Age of the Imperium, and this would then have far-reaching implications for humanity, as the Emperor would carry his knowledge and strength of this golden age into a time when none would recall it, and where it would be of critical importance to our survival. For the Emperor, he would use this knowledge of the Age of Technology to bring humanity back to a glimmer of what once had been. In the thousands of years where humanity established its first interstellar empire, we would become, as much as the Eldar, supremely dependent on technology. humankind had risen to a level of godlike understanding, and this was embraced and practiced by the people of the time. The Empire of Mankind was seen as a bastion of technological achievement and began to use a new class of humans entitled the Navigators to expand our reach and use the newly discovered warp to travel beyond the distances of existing star drives and cover vast distances in a short time. A navigator's role is to, as the name suggests, protect and guide a ship through the tides and dangers of the warp.
Yeah, was it the Death Guard, Mortarian, or somebody else? I think it was the second in command. Killed all the navigators as soon as they went in, and then they got, well, I'm assuming they got lost, and then Nurgle's forces ended up infecting them with chaos and all that. But have they ever tried to look into, I guess, well, warp travel, but not calling it warp travel, just like teleportation, I guess, right? In a manner that didn't use the warp, just used science and technology, did not use the webway, which I think was the name for the other one, but just human ingenuity and just transporting one thing from here to over here. Did they ever try to look into that, or did they find the warp and realize they can use it and then just stay with it because they really didn't know what hell that could actually unleash?
Eventually, over time, humanity would find the warp had become too turbulent to traverse. But in this time, navigators, they're not strictly psychers as such. They possess a special gene called, unsurprisingly, the navigator gene. They also possess other abnormal characteristics, including a third eye in the forehead, as well as some more alien appearances such as no pupils in their human eyes and translucent skin, as well as maybe larger than normal appendages. Their origin is believed to have not been a natural development, but to have come about through genetic experimentation and engineering in this period of the age of technology. It was likely that mankind discovered the warp and that it could be utilised for crossings, but that required a safe means to traverse it and looked to create a solution to that problem. Mankind's age of expansion and technological glory across the galaxy would lead to many worlds requiring their own localised defence forces. In this time,
as far as the navigation as well, how exactly, or how does it navigate for you? Is it like a compass, GPS type deal? Like, are you consistently going into the warp, depending on where it would appear, I guess, right? And then you're going into, once you go through and you're in the warp, are you consistently going to the same area and then popping out on the other side, right? And then the navigator can kind of be like, hey, we're going, we see demons coming in. All right, let's go this way. And then go back to just on course. Like, is that kind of how it works? Because, you know, I hear they have navigators, but I don't quite know exactly what, like, how could that third eye help them in a way? Like, maybe it helps them sense danger, allows them to redirect the ship. I don't know.
Time, humanity's mastery of technology was largely unequaled, and this would be employed in the defence and relative growth of the colonies. One of these defence forces, one of the most powerful of them, would be the Imperial Knights. These were colossal war machines that towered over all they surveyed on a battlefield. They were built with the knowledge of the Golden Age of technology, and these giants survived until the Imperial Age, but they can essentially no longer be constructed from scratch. And as is often the case with technology in the Imperium, it is now merely maintained. The Imperial Knights themselves were operated by nobles from the colony worlds who would be entombed within them. They are sworn to protect their citizens from all Xenos threats and the endless nightmares in the universe. As the Knights would advance into the later ages, they continued their noble values and morals. Some of the Knights are the most selfless and dedicated forces within the Imperium, as well as being some of the oldest. As with most technology from the Dark or Golden Age technology, the Knights are immensely powerful, allowing them to run and fight as much as a dreadnought would fight, but on a much larger scale. These ancient heroes have fought thousands of battles across millennia and stand ready to defend Imperial citizens and support Astartes anywhere in the galaxy. After the Knights we have the Titans, and Titans are the epic war machines of the Imperium. A Knight and the smallest Titan can be anything like 9-10 meters, but the big Titans can be anything up to 50 meters. They are gargantuan death machines.
I gotta say, I've always kind of dug the way that Deus Mechanicus looks. I like this little color right here. It's kind of like a bluish green, right? A sword, a little Tron looking sword. It looks like a musket. But I've always kind of liked the aesthetic, the steampunk type vibe, right? And the symbol looks pretty cool. I'm assuming this symbol also has a significance in the way it's actually created.
Many people believe that the Mechanicum were originally responsible for creating the Titans. This is not strictly correct. They do construct some Titans, but many they simply maintain. This is because the technology used to create Titans is very, very old, and like many things in the universe of Warhammer 40,000 for the Imperium, a lot of technology is merely maintained because of its complexity. Simpler devices are constructed, but this happens less and less. But the Mechanicum do create some Titans for the Imperium. Originally, the Mechanicus found versions that were completely autonomous, created in the golden age of technology. And the largest Titan so far discovered was upon the lost forge world of Charania. It was a completely autonomous war machine and was dubbed the Castigator class Titan. Its schematic was apparently also contained within a standard template construct on this planet, and it was far superior to any class of Titan utilized by the Adeptus Mechanicus or any other intelligent race in the galaxy. This was so far the only known discovered Castigator class Titan, but it was subsequently destroyed by Imperial Grey Knights. Grey Knights are the secretive and unbreakable order of Astartes warriors dedicated to the protection of the Imperium from the very darkest foes that humanity faces in the 41st millennium. Now, the portion of the STC database containing the data for the manufacture of the Castigator class Titan was also destroyed by the Mechanicus. It possessed AI, which is strictly outlawed and heretical within the Imperium. Secondly, it had somehow long ago been corrupted by living chaos energy, and for this reason it could obviously no longer be supported. Imperial records of this event, though, note that the cost of life and resources required to destroy this Titan monstrosity was...
As far as part of the AI, obviously since that one had AI, I don't know if it'd be safe to assume that it actually managed to survive the men of iron. I keep getting that mixed up, and all that when the Unification Wars and all, or not the Unification War, or damn it, okay, when all that was going on, where they had to face these AIs, right? Did any of them survive, kind of go off to do their own thing, or were they all completely destroyed? Is what I'm trying to get at.
Severe. The key point here, though, is that mankind was developing machines in the golden age of technology that would never again be equaled. They could be merely copied, emulated, or used as a template to work from in the future. But our level of knowledge, our rules and guides on what could be created, due in part to events that were yet to come, would very much limit humanity's advancement in the millennia that lay ahead. I mentioned a moment ago something called an STC. This denotes a device known as a standard template construct. These are one of the single most valuable objects in the galaxy for the Imperium, and their importance was no less during the Age of Technology. So what is an STC? STC systems were advanced AI computers created during the Golden or Dark Age of Technology, and are said to have contained the sum total of human, scientific and technological knowledge. STCs were created when human interstellar civilization was at its technological peak. Their original purpose was to enable colonists to survive on the new worlds they arrived upon, as they could not carry securely the mass amount of knowledge gained by humanity at this time, and even if they could, they might not have people capable of understanding how to utilize this. The STC...
So ST sounds familiar. I feel like I've heard that before in a video. I don't remember which one. So essentially, a real-life crafting machine, right? And I'm going to assume that at a certain point, since it had everything that humans ever had, and obviously being AI, it could also gather more information and adapt kind of on its own. Now, with that said, at a certain point, humans probably going to think, hey, I don't need to remember all this. We already had someone who did it. They already programmed it into this STC. There's no need to teach anybody it, because all I have to do is push in a couple numbers or something, maybe push something on the pad right there, and then boom, out comes whatever it is that you needed, right? Like in this case, also having people to be able to build things and then use that to sustain themselves in the new planets. So once there was a heavy reliance on these, now, no, I mean, yeah, it would make sense that there would be a whole bunch of these STCs because, going out to different planets. So after that happens, that's why people don't longer know how to create these things over incredibly complicated, which is probably why it took all these thousands of years to get certain things like Titan, for example. Yeah, I mean, that seems to make sense to me, at least from what I'm trying to piece together. Could be completely wrong, though.
Solved this problem. It enabled the colonies to access all of humanity's knowledge and display it in a way for them to be able to create anything they needed from the resources available and solve any issue that could arise for them on the new home worlds, no matter the geography, resource limitations or climate. This would enable them to build anything from a simple lasgun to a fortified bunker, massive war machines or an atmospheric processor. STC systems possess the ability to not just store information but also to produce new designs to meet changing circumstances. They are immensely powerful sources of information and power, and consequently the Imperium places a high value on obtaining these lost relics of ancient knowledge. Even though now, after many thousands of years had passed, most of the discovered STCs are damaged to the point they only contain fragments of their former stored information. But Imperial forces will still use any means or resources necessary to obtain an STC once it has been discovered, even if this means the sacrifice of legions of military or civilian Imperial citizens. From the golden age of technology and into the ages to come.
But would people these days be able to see and know what it is and actually be able to use it, or would they just kind of go, it's just a glowing green thing, right? And just kind of like toss it off to the side? Like, who would be able to identify that? I would assume the Mechanicus, maybe Space Marines, but wouldn't anybody be able to identify it?
These valuable systems would be lost or destroyed, so that now in the age of the Imperium they have become beyond rare, almost just a legend. So the consequent discovery of remnants of any new technology from the Dark Age of technology puts an STC's value to humanity beyond estimation. The little knowledge that has been recovered from damaged STC units is then utilised, copied and stored by the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, who are based deep on the primary forge homeworld of Mars. They believe that STCs are the most holy of artifacts and will seek and protect them at any cost. This little divergence is an important one because an STC recovery, no matter its state of repair, still remains as one of the most important objectives for Imperial forces in the 41st millennium. The holy grail of this quest, though, although unlikely, would be to recover an intact STC, thereby gifting the Imperium all of the stored knowledge of mankind from the golden age of technology. If the Imperium were able to recover an STC of this standard, it would catapult the existing human society into becoming yet again one of the most advanced and significantly, if not the most powerful state in the galaxy. The STC Crusade also explains in part about the state of technology and development of the Imperium, in that much of the knowledge regarding tech is replicated or learned rather than invented and created. Although new tech does come along, it's not.
Could they not, through trial and error, at least no, I was gonna say the Adeptus Mechanicus probably make a new one, maybe be very, I don't know if robust is the right word, but very basic essentially, right? And then get it to the level of those STCs from back then. But then again, they don't want to make a new technology, specifically one. Wait, but wouldn't the STC be considered an AI technically, right? It's kind of murky waters, a little bit on the gray side, not just black and white.
Overtly specified why so little resources are put into research now. It could be speculated though, however, that mankind relied so strongly upon the Emperor in the last 10 millennia that now they believe only he is capable of directing mankind's advancement, and they solely focus on maintaining him and maintaining the state of Imperial affairs. So we return to our story, and at this time in the golden age of technology, humanity continues to expand across the galaxy. Initially slowly, as the gigantic starships we crafted were incapable of using the warp.
Alright, so at this point, Big E's still chilling.
to traverse space. And as we learned previous, they took generations to reach their destination. They were essentially travelling worlds, similar to the Eldar craft world of the 41st millennium. When these ships reached their destination, they would slowly be deconstructed, and their materials could be used to create massive war machines such as the Imperial Knights and Titans, which the colony could use to defend themselves against the dangers of the galaxy. Dangers such as the Eldar and Orcs, who were first discovered in this period as a result of our reaching out beyond our own system to more regularly explore the galaxy. However, interestingly, during this time, humanity was actually considered more powerful than it is in the 41st millennium. This strength was mainly due to our technology rather than actual physical forces, such as Astartes, who did not exist in this age. Science was humanity's primary religion, and the society of man perceived itself as having reached a time where no one could be a real challenge to us. To a degree, this was actually true, so much so that the Xenos races of Eldar and Orc actually signed non-aggression pacts with mankind, which seems bizarre from the Orc point of view, but there we are.
Yeah, I was going to say, but then again, are they Orcs at that point, or are they still Crocs, like the smarter version of Orcs? But even then, to get a peace treaty with them, oh.
Yeah. The discovery and use of interstellar drives, that is, an engine enabling cross-warp travel, now powered humanity's expansion and domination of the galaxy forward. A federated government was formed, enabling us to create a strong trade community and, most importantly, remain unified and powerful throughout our colonies spread across the galaxy, aiding and supporting where necessary with either materials, logistics or military. The exact form and nature of this federation is unknown from this time, as so much knowledge and history was lost. To speculate though, it seems likely that from the way in which humans would live at this time, the Federation would have focused more on discovery, science and working to better humanity, as well as supporting our widespread colonies. As the societies we had seeded across the galaxy grew stronger and more developed, most humans would live long, peaceful lives where menial actions were carried out by automation, leaving people time to indulge in their own lives and dedicate themselves to the glorious expansion of mankind. This golden age of peace bears a stark contrast to the unforgiving brutality of the 41st millennium, the Imperium where many citizens are now born into lives that are shorter, work-driven, and even hellish by comparison. Back with our timeline though, and although navigators had now been discovered and enabled interstellar travel, psychers, that is humans with strong psychic ability, had for the longest time evaded or simply passed undetected. It would be in the age of technology where this new class of human would finally be identified. These psychers seemingly largely avoided the demonic possessions which had occurred for the Old Ones, Orc and Eldar. It is unclear why this would be, but again you may speculate that the Emperor had a role to play in guiding and shielding humanity through this time. As we know, he had always lain in the shadows, ensuring our safety and creating small influence until he felt it was necessary to come to the fore. Another possibility is that by comparison, the Orcs and Eldar with their more advanced psychic powers simply shone brighter. As we know, the demons of the warp are actually attracted to psychic power in real space like moths to a lamp, and so they appeared amid the depths of the galaxy, a brighter beacon for the chaotic creatures to be attracted towards, whereas the human psychers were very early in development, their powers were less attractive, they did not stand out so much. These psychic mutations were initially limited to only a few individuals per billion or so humans, but toward the end of the age of technology, psychers would appear throughout the colonies more widespread than ever before. And some
was there a reason for this actual big widespread? Because a couple in a billion, right? Considering now we have 7 billion, obviously, then they probably have tens, hundreds of billions. What was that jump start, I guess, to get more psychers? How did more psychers end up starting to appear, right? Was it maybe like a involuntary effect from the Emperor maybe caused it? Maybe somebody did something, one of the psychers, right? I don't know.
Some colonies who were advanced and open-minded, they could see the potential advantages brought by human psychers, and they were protected and allowed to develop and explore their abilities. However, On other, less advanced human colonies, they were often killed and hunted down as the people here feared rather than embraced their divergent powers, much of, similar to witch hunts. As I hinted at earlier, one of the reasons during the golden age of technology that humanity was able to not only survive but stretch itself out to colonize and conquer worlds in the galaxy, not to mention defending itself against aggressive Xenos, would be due to their reliance on AI and the machine creations of the time. However, as nearly all science fiction dictates, these primary sentient machines in the Human Galactic Federation would be known as the Men of Iron, and they would stereotypically turn on their creators and enter us into a cataclysmic war. An STC containing a template for the Men of Iron was discovered by Imperial forces on a Chaos-controlled world. It became apparent that much as the Castigator-class Titan, the Men of Iron here had also been corrupted by Chaos, and the AI of these creations was sentient. So we can perhaps speculate that the Men of Iron initially resented their human creators, but combined with this were also corrupted, possibly by Chaos, which at the time was relatively unknown to mankind, hence the lack of any documentation to support such speculation. It is, however, a possibility and stacks up with what we know of the corruptibility of human AI creations. Also, the intent of the dark forces of Chaos to obliterate humanity once it became aware of its existence. Regardless of the reason, though, this war...
Interesting, so that's how it happened. Alright, so they got corrupted by Chaos. And they were also kind of pissed off at humans, right? Huh. But the fact that, see, because when I think of the corruption, right, or corruption like from Chaos getting someone, I think of human. I think of a human, to put it weirdly enough, like a meat sack, right? I didn't know it could corrupt. Oh, well, technically, I've heard some stories that there's like a hammer, Petrabo, I think has it, that is like affected. Or like has infused with Chaos or something. So I'm assuming that if it could do inanimate objects, technically a robot or an AI would be inanimate, right? Because it's made out of metal or iron. So, okay, yeah. Then I can definitely see how it could be corrupted then.
War was one of the greatest disasters to befall humanity and would rage for centuries. The exact length of the war is not recorded. The conflict was eventually won by humanity, but at a great cost. The damage caused by this conflict to interstellar human society was hugely destructive. We would lose masses of knowledge and technology, not to mention devastating humanity's economic strength and political unity. The war would begin the series of events that would lead into the collapse of the Federation of Humanity at the end of the Age of Technology. As so often is the case, very little information exists from this time, largely due to the Imperium being so wary of a similar disaster happening again. And this is why, amongst the Imperium of mankind, you'll find only the simplest forms of AI. It is viewed as being exceptionally dangerous technology and is strictly outlawed. A substitute is often to combine human and machine into mindless drone-like beings known as servitors. Servitors are the Imperium's cybernetic servants, lacking true self-awareness, and are created from the bodies of either condemned criminals who are unpleasantly lobotomized, or vat-grown humanoids whose bodies and brains are partially replaced with machine systems. As a result of this catastrophic conflict between the Men of Iron and humanity in the golden age of technology, it is now considered one of the most severe crimes in Imperial society to develop a self-aware artificially intelligent machine. It is just considered too dangerous to even consider. Around Millennium 23, the warp was taking hold of psychers and wreaking havoc on human colonies. Feudal night worlds were more conservative and less abiding of psychers, as we said previously, who had hunted them down. These would fare better than the others, who had adopted them more open-mindedly at the time. The knights in their semi-titan armour would battle massive warp entities and serve to protect the planet's human population, abiding to their strict code of feudal discipline and ability. Very often, they would be the bastions that protected mankind's worlds, and their importance cannot be underestimated at this time. As is often the case in history, it is not one but a series of disasters that leads to total ruination, and this was no exception for the glorious empire humanity had established during the Dark Age of technology. Whilst it was struggling to recover from a collapse in its unity, as well as destruction of many of its resources and its ability to trade efficiently with other worlds, a new disaster would occur that would see the end of humanity's golden age and instead throw us further into near total annihilation.
The whole part of it looks worse, is worse, it can get a lot worse in Warhammer.
The race of man would never again reach this golden pinnacle of technological achievement.
Alright, let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause it right there because, we're about halfway through the video. Perfect place to stop. But I do see the next upcoming chapter, the Age of Strife, and then we got Unification Wars, and the actual Emperor of Man, and then, the Great Crusade, Fall of the Eldar. So, all this is setting up. So picture this video as the setup until we actually get someone introduced to the Emperor of Man in the next part 2 of this video. So, just going back through like the little bit of chapters here, was it the one that really, obviously the origin of him, no one knows, right? A lot of gray area, and I think that's just for you, kind of like I said in the beginning, that where it allows for the writers to maybe just hold off on it in case they do want to write like an origin story, right? Or it allows people to make their own theories. I'm recording over here. And then also, see, I lost my train of thought. In any case, we don't know where he came from. The one he mentioned about the old one actually like helping create him seems to make the most sense, at least to me right now. Let me know down in the comments below what you think makes the most sense. And then we had the Age of Terror here, where they actually started to see the warp, and that's when they were kind of making the travel, making those navigators. Again, don't know how those navigators actually navigate, or like what's the time they actually spend in the warp, as far as like going through and then coming out the other side to go wherever they were at. And also, how exactly does the warp work? Do they just like, I know there's like the Eye of Terror and all that, or like, did they physically create one, or do they have one in a certain designated spot that will release you out at another certain designated spot, or is it kind of movable somehow? I wouldn't assume so, but just some kind of interesting that I kind of thought of. And last thing, so the STC is the ultimate piece of technology, because it is the technology that has everything that humans knew. And obviously, like at this time in Warhammer, people know a whole lot less. Somebody was, and I was gonna say when I fixed the STC, but obviously, they don't know how, right? And what would happen if somebody was able to find it? I did mention it before as well. Would someone be able to identify it, right? Because after so much time, people probably wouldn't even know what it is. Maybe just the Mechanicus, as I said again. But what would happen if the Imperium of Man at this point did manage to grab one or get their hands on one? Would people, for the most part, I guess depending on who found it, would they try to use it to like really help humanity? Would they use it for their own gain, right? What happens if they did say that a planet that was corrupted by chaos or taken over by it had a program. Why are you honking? You've been honking your horn for 30 seconds. A minute. They had a STC on that planet that had a blueprint of something about corrupting the AI, right? If I remember that right. Which means that the STC can also be corrupted. And what would happen if that fully went into the control, I'd say like, not necessarily the Chaos Gods, but maybe like a demon Primarch, for example. What kind of chaos that would unleash on the universe? That pun was definitely intended. But in any case, I feel like I have a lot more questions in this part 2 coming up. You should be thrown in jail. In any case, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that dislike button if you didn't like it. Leave me a little comment as to maybe what it was. Until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.